o'clock, Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting of the City Council of the City of Montgomery to order at this time. Appreciate everyone coming physically, those tuning in as well. We do have a quorum present, but note that Mr. Wilkerson and Mr. Olson are not present at this time. Please silence your cell phones to avoid any interruptions of our proceedings today. And with that, we will stand for the invocation. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the rich blessings we're able to see. May we honor you in all that we do and speak. Give us wisdom and guidance in moving forward with our proceedings and growing the city, God, the nation as well. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Salute to the American flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Bless you.
The Visitors Citizens Forum, we have 3 people signed up to speak. We'll go in the order in which those were submitted, starting with Mr. James Langley. Please go to the microphone and state your name and address.
Buckle up, Buttercup.
And when you get there, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
He won't hear you.
You called my name?
Yes.
Come over here. Come over here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is James Langley. I live at 1002 College Street, Montgomery. And the occupants at my house are, sometimes they're valuable to the city, and the city needs to communicate with the occupants in my house. I don't mind that, the occupants in my house receiving notifications or publications or packets from the city. I don't mind that. I welcome it. The manner is important to me. If it's after dark, the city needs to call before they deliver anything. Also, the delivery people don't need to illuminate my whole house and yard and property with spotlights to deliver a package to me. And that's all I got for you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, second one would be Arnett Easley.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Arnett Easley, 15275 North Liberty. I want to start first at how much I love this city. Been here all my life. But I do think from a city standpoint, I think we have been overrun with rules, overreaching rules, sometimes that regulate one area of town and not the other. Montgomery is comprised of 4 ways. The city limits run both ways. And I think the stakeholders, which is the residents, should be a vital part of the city and what the city is trying to get done sometime. And I think it should be inclusive. I have rehabilitated one property and got plans to do more. And I hear it's rumbling about that. Things that the city don't have the money to do or care to do. And I go by the rules, whatever the rules are. The whole while I was doing that process, I got with the powers that be. Now, anything after that is kind of out of my control. I want to put a fence up to cover that eyesore, the sewer plant. I see about 20 different fences the same one I want to build, but I'm going to do my due diligence. I want to ask for permission to put a picket fence up that's about 20 of them in town. And I just think in the long run, when we overreach, we should just look at the thing from a common sense standpoint sometimes. I've been right up there, and a lot of times we just meet and never find a happy medium to push the city forward. We're going to agree, that's healthy. But let's agree on the things that we agree on and move it forward. You know, this city is a great city in the history. We don't want to get dragged into the political clown atmosphere as Washington, D.C. is. We got the whole of Montgomery to stand for. Even the Gold Guy system stand for. I see him around town the minute ago. I see the Gold standing tall, tell how I had the Gold. If a Gold Guy enough sense to stand alone and be proud, we got to put our personal feelings aside and do what's best for the city at large. At large. If the work is being done, I think that if you're elected, if GLO or whoever's pushing back against making the city, we can make our own, we can do some things ourselves, we can push to get there. Let's form a posse as you do as much. Let's form a posse and ride downtown and get it done. Rules are great, but I think they need to be directed evenly across the board. And MEDC, the money that I know has been spent on frivolous things, I think a whole lot of people in Montgomery, the stakeholders, that pay their taxes, would be more than happy to get some help. I don't care what it is, the whole thing, whatever it is. Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to preach, but I will.
I'm trying to get it to turn off.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Elisa McCorkadale, you're next.
Elisa McCorkadale, 661 Old Plantersville Road. Serving God is a demonstration of your love for Him through loving service to others. Council, thank you for your service. I know the hardship that comes from living with someone who places service above self. My husband began attending city meetings in 2005 and was appointed to his first board in 2006. Our children, 12 and a half months apart, were babies when he would leave in the evenings to attend city meetings. Looking back, this was very clever of him. Each one of you are saying no to something so you can say yes to service. David is a man of integrity and honesty, despite what you may hear tonight. When running for city council, he never spoke ill of his opponents, but ran on his record of service, which began in 1996 in the U.S. Army. Several of you are in your infancy in serving our community as an elected official. Mr. Mayor, you have 18 months of service under your belt. That's 18 months longer than I have. Unless, of course, you count the 197 months I have supported Dave while he served, saying no to us so we could say yes to something greater. Dave's 16-year commitment to our city and the recommendation of his peers landed him the role of interim city administrator. Is Dave a city administrator? No. Is he capable of filling a gap until one is found? Absolutely. And the city received one heck of a deal as he requested zero compensation for taking on the additional responsibility. So what is the thanks one might receive from service to our town? In June, Dave was locked out of the former city administrator's office after being accused of criminal activity by Mr. Sanford. He was the subject of an internal secret police investigation in what we think was mid-September, although Dave learned about this days before leaving on vacation and still has no details. The mayor placed Dave's position on a council agenda when Dave was out of town. Mr. Sanford, you had signed off on his vacation request in August. While it is human nature to forget, you were reminded of this, yet insisted moving forward in his absence. And Dave's now had his character questioned and defamed. And I close with an excerpt from this morning's devotional I found fortuitous, Psalm 101. The man who slanders his neighbor in secret, I will bring to silence. Thank you.
All right, moving on to consent agenda. Item number 1, consideration and approval of the following minutes of The regular city council meeting, 10/25/22. We have some corrections. Council has.
Mayor, I provided you all with the correct version tonight. You have a blue caption at the front. I had used the word police chief in duplicate instead of saying human resources as the first and then police chief.
We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting of 10/25/2022 with the corrections.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving consent agenda item number 1, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no, and the motion carries unanimously. Consideration and possible action number 2, consideration and possible action to accept a donation from Charlie Diggs, Wade Nelson, and Robert Cluna for a fully equipped command center to the Montgomery Police Department.
Mayor, go ahead. You got something? Go ahead. Mayor, Council, this was a donation given by these 3 gentlemen. It's a command trailer. We use that command trailer for doing any of the festivals that we have. It's also used for emergencies. If we have a crime scene we need to set up, we have all the equipment inside this command center to hold the equipment that we need. And also, according to 6.07 of our manual, we have to come to full council to get you to approve this.
What is the value of this?
Ma'am,
What is the value of this?
it's about $15,000
And where is it located?
located right out here where the trucks are.
So it's a mobile unit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So the resolution is,
There is a resolution in your packets. This is the formal procedure to make an exception, accept the donation of an asset to the city.
and these gentlemen could not be here tonight?
No, ma'am.
No. Okay.
Entertain a motion.
Well, I make a motion, if the chief's happy with it, I ought to be happy with it, so I make a motion that we accept the donation from Charlie Diggs, Wade Nelson, and Robert Cluna for the equipped command center to the Montgomery Police Department.
I'll second.
Motion by Cheryl, second by Pat. Motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of accepting the donation from Charlie Diggs, Wade Nelson, Robert Cluna, a fully equipped command center to the Montgomery Police Department, say yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Anyone opposed, no. And the motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Chief. And thank you to those gentlemen as well. Item number 3, presentation and acceptance of the Meadow Ridge feasibility study, development number 2213.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We were requested to perform a feasibility study for the Meadow Ridge single-family development.
Sorry, I was trying to catch the attention of the officer.
I will walk you through the feasibility study as I've done previously. I know we've had quite a few of these in recent history, so a lot of the details on the city's plant capacity will be similar to what you have heard. Starting on page 3 of the study, which is page 17 of your packet. So Morning Cloud Investments is the developer, and they have requested a feasibility study for a 28-acre tract along Lone Star Parkway. This is just west of the community center, right across the street from Montgomery Brewery, if y'all have heard anything about that. Again, just west of the community center, close to Town Creek. So it's a 28-acre single-family development. About 8.25 acres of this property is outside of the city limits within your ETJ and would need to be annexed. The rest of it is already in your city limits. The developer is proposing approximately 81 single-family lots at 75-foot width for development for in-city service. Going through kind of the overview, the city currently has water and wastewater plant capacity to serve this development and the other developments for the next few years. As I've mentioned in the past, we will need to start looking at expanding those facilities and begin initial studies for how and where and best ways to expand those. Looking overall at the costs going into the development, this development would qualify for impact fees between water and wastewater totaling about $294,000, $295,000 to round. And they would be responsible for some offsite utility improvements, which I'll expand upon here in just a little bit. The developer is proposing an estimated $36 million valuation at full build out. We assumed 95% collection and 75% of the properties receiving that 20% homestead exemption. So that brought your total estimated annual tax revenue to about $116,000. Jumping over to page 5 of the study, which is page 19 of your packet. As I mentioned, the city is projected to have sufficient water plant capacity to meet the needs of this development and other developments within the next couple of years. But I want to keep in mind that we need to be prepared to expand our water production facilities as the years come. As far as getting water to this property in the first place, there is an existing 12-inch water line along Lone Star Parkway that terminates just before the property. And so this is shown in Exhibit A, which is this one in your packets on page 24. So it shows where the existing water line terminates right in front of the community center. The developer would be responsible for extending that water line to the western boundary of their property. Well, after that is annexed, it would be right at the city limits. Keeping in mind the future potential for this to close a waterline loop along Lone Star Parkway as developments come. That waterline extension is something that has been on your capital improvements plan and is also included in your, listed on your impact fee projects to close that loop along Lone Star Parkway. Jumping over to sanitary sewer collection, again, your wastewater treatment plant has capacity today to serve this development and the other developments that are actively going on for the next few years. Again, keeping in mind the need to consider how and where we are going to expand the facilities. For this tract, given the existing sewer facilities available and the topography of the tract, a new lift station will be required to serve this property. We are proposing that this be an on-site lift station within the property that would be dedicated to the public, and that the wet well be sized deeper and larger than what would be needed for this development so that other properties surrounding this may also tie into the lift station. However, the pumps would only be sized for what is needed for this development at the time, and then as others tie on, we can talk about switching pumps at a later date. A couple of alternatives that we did evaluate before coming to the conclusion that a lift station was needed was we looked at lift station number 7, which is located at the community center, and there is not capacity in that lift station to provide service to this tract, as well as the challenge of crossing Town Creek presented some issues with elevations and how would we get to the lift station 7 in the first place. The other option that we looked at would be extending a public gravity sanitary sewer line from the property, from the back of the property through Lone Star Estates and connecting to the existing trunk line through Lone Star Estates. The issue we ran into again was elevation challenges with Town Creek and crossing the creek.
Can I interject and ask a question while you're on that topic before I forget it?
Yes, sir.
So just because we say that the capacity doesn't necessarily mean we have the pressure, but you don't have to have an above ground water source necessarily. You're saying there's gravitational ways to meet the pressure as well. So when I hear capacity, does that include pressure with the capacity? Or are we going to need an above ground water source? I guess you're saying right now we don't.
So I think we're getting mixed up between water and sanitary sewer. So water is where we talk about pressure as well. And then sanitary sewers where we talk about gravity flow.
Okay, you were mentioning gravity, I got you.
Yes, I apologize if we went through that a little quickly. On the water side, we do have sufficient both gallons capacity, and we don't anticipate any pressure issues
Okay.
getting to this tract. As far as an above ground storage tank, the TCEQ has requirements that when we hit a certain threshold, we have to install an elevated storage tank. That limit is 2,500 physical connections to the system. And
So
so that's a state mandated rule that we are approaching.
Yeah.
On the sanitary sewer side, when it comes to gravity, we have elevations that we have to contend with, and it would not be feasible to cross Town Creek and connect into the existing trunk line. As far as drainage goes, all the on-site storm sewer would be dedicated to the public and would be responsible for the city of Montgomery. This is the same as has been done in other developments. Any on-site detention ponds would remain the responsibility of the developer. It would need to be constructed to City of Montgomery and Montgomery County standards, but would remain private. Jumping ahead to paving and traffic, the land plan currently provides for 2 proposed access points along Lone Star Parkway to provide access for 81 homes. The developer would be responsible for obtaining Montgomery County approval for both access points. And then whenever we're doing one of these for traffic, we also look at your approved major thoroughfare plan. And there is a proposed road that runs east and west along the southern portion of the property. And so our recommendation is, where the road is located on the major thoroughfare plan, we don't anticipate it to be feasible, but what we are recommending at this time is that the developer stub out streets to the west, south, and east of the property to allow the option for a future connection if it does in fact happen, but not dedicate a full 60-foot right-of-way for a future collector street through the tract. So giving options, but trying to minimize restrictions on the developer as much as possible. And then when it comes to development costs, kind of the overall that are being looked at, we have a summary on page 23 of your packet, or page 9 of our study. We would recommend a deposit into their escrow account of $47,500. That includes administrative fees, legal fees, and engineering fees for everything from annexation and kind of the next steps after this feasibility study is accepted, all the way through project completion. Water and wastewater impact fees, as I mentioned, and then the offsite utility improvements being that water line extension and the force main extension. We are estimating those to be approximately $762,500, including contingencies and engineering. One thing I want to note is that that does not include the cost of the on-site lift station. That's something that we would leave to the developer to size, and we would work with them, but we did not prepare a cost for the lift station. And then the last paragraph being financial feasibility. As I mentioned, we are estimating this development to bring an additional $116,000 in tax revenue with some assumptions on collection and homestead exemption. So I know I went through that a little bit quickly, but do y'all have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the city currently planning or making plans to meet the extra capacity needed for 2024 and 2026 for the water and the sewer?
Yes.
There are
Yes.
ongoing plans.
So where we're at right now is in the financial planning stage. We've got it in the capital improvements plan. We've also done a sanitary sewer analysis to begin determining, does it make more sense to expand the Stewart Creek plant or rebuild the Town Creek plant? And trying to determine, that's kind of the biggest kind of fork in the road, if you will. But we have done a sewer analysis to start determining that.
Just to add on, so if you remember, in your budget this year, we have the design expenses for the future water plant and future sewer plant. And both of those are capital improvement projects, either funded through impact fees. So part of the impact fee collection is being set aside to go toward those projects as we move forward.
I had a question posed before this about lighting issues not at that spot, but certainly at that spot it's a little weak, but last 0.8 miles westerly, it hits 105. It's really, really dark. traffic-wise. I don't even go that way anymore to attempt. So the traffic and the lighting is horrible. But that last 8/10 is all Montgomery County, is that correct?
That's correct.
So can y'all at least touch base there? Because if we're gonna put something in another half mile up, I would think we would want to communicate with county commissioner. Now, I told that citizen to do that, and you're welcome to do that as well. But we need to start getting ahead of this thing because it is just really dangerous. It's dangerous from traffic volume, and then when you factor in the darkness with the curb, I would like to try to get ahead of that so that we're getting some better lighting.
Definitely. And as I mentioned, the developer will be required to obtain Montgomery County approval since
Okay.
Lone Star Parkway is owned by Montgomery County. And so that could be something that's discussed at that time as well.
Okay. Okay, ladies, so this is presentation accepted type of thing. It's not anything past that, so does someone have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the feasibility study.
Motion by Pat to approve. Second by Cheryl. This motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving the presentation and feasibility study as presented, item number 3, say yes.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. And the motion carries. Executive session adjourned into closed session in compliance with section 551.001 ETSEQ. Texas Government Code to wit. Number 1, section 551.074, personnel matters, interim city administrator and city secretary and director administrative services. It is 6:27 and we are adjourned into executive session.
Mayor, it looks like I've just received a letter from Mr. McCorkadale and similar letter from Ms. Brown to have any discussion regarding them done
In open session.
in open session.
Okay. Okay, let me first give a rationale that was submitted to Mr. Billy Real and Alan Petroff, Johnson Petroff LLP, from me. And it's a summation and conclusions regarding the internal investigation of Dave McCorkadale. Before I do that, I want to say that just in general, starting late summer, it was already apparent that Mr. McCorkadale and police chief were really having some internal strife. It came out in a budget meeting very vividly to that point. And that was in August, I believe. In September, late August, there were exchange of emails that further made that very clear. It was frustrations of the chief. It was comments made towards the code enforcement officer that ended up with Dave writing a letter that basically stated that the code enforcement officers' actions were making it very difficult for us to do that job, to do our jobs. And Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief then replied very strong language, "That's not it at all." He then went into some inconsistencies in leadership, confusion, and things of that nature, and addressed it in a very stern manner. Following that, Chief sent a very strong letter to council and me that suggested very highly that he hoped that council and mayor would get management who understands goals and fairness and consistency in dealing with staff in particular, and giving direction that was consistent with those goals. Once again, frustration by his part gets to the point where I either ignored it, let it continue to fester, or reach out to the chief as I did. "Would you like to have lunch with me? Steakhouse, I believe it was, Chief." And in our first conversation, he was very relieved that I had done so, once again affirming the level of his frustration. And he led that conversation with what he understood to be two choices. That he could either take it to the DA, or he could give it under policy to the mayor, and let the mayor and the council deal with that. And I said, well, obviously, let's do that. Let's let the mayor and the council. Once that happened, that's when an investigation took place. He told me that these concerns were about permitting. They were about permitting, for example, one permitting fee for 3 buildings. These were issues related to Dave saying one thing and then later on either not following up with it. In the end, it caused tremendous dissension between Mr. Rick Hanna and Dave, to the point that we had heard, Carol, if I remember correctly, that Dave was ready to cut ties with Rick Hanna. And so that compelled me to reach out to Carol and Dave simultaneously, we're very close to that, to set a meeting to try to figure out with Dave, and Carol joined us in that meeting, what we could do to reconcile. That was actually the Thursday before the Saturday meeting, I believe, with Chief. It was actually a week before that, probably 8 days. And so in the course of going into the investigation, there's video testimony of Mr. Rick Hanna, his assistant as well. And that alone was 2 hours. You go roughly 45 minutes. Chief established what is the procedure for permitting. Rick Hanna is a highly qualified, not only as a building administrator, but as one who fully understands the ramifications of anyone, of any part of the process of permitting and building codes. Rick was very, very clear repeatedly with those statements, stating that he has warned, and the emails reflect that if Dave continues to, as he puts it, do things backwards, allowing things to be done, and then sending either code enforcement or him to go inspect, if I'm right, Rick, something that never had a permit. And the documentation is thick toward that end. I have them all earmarked here. And so after establishing for 45 minutes, here's the way it should be. Here's that protocol. Over and over, Rick states, you're putting us, Dave, in a compromising position. Over and over, he said, we are doing things wrong and backwards, which would explain the contentious nature that precipitated a meeting with Carol. And the reason I chose Carol is because Carol's known Rick for a long time. You must have maybe touched base with her. I don't know the exact order. So all of this is getting there, dumped. And the assistant to Mr. Hanna, Shavana, over and over tells where she is, again, warning Dave, that these inconsistencies are going to come back on them. And through the testimony, written and orally, you're putting us in a compromising position. And let me be very clear, as a council member, I had these same types of concerns going back to February. Mr. Tran was here, Dave was here, in the same capacity. Any notion that these are just for 4 months is flat false. Otherwise, I would agree with you. It's too much for a man to do. So, again, you know, specific language in her testimony matched with another internal employee who specifically says that Dave told them, you let me worry about liability. Which I'm the mayor. I got a right to worry about liability, otherwise I'm culpable. Who does that? It's irresponsibility. And when I go to Miss Tilly, who was hired in February, within 2 to 3 weeks, she's already concerned. Back when I was council member. And so she documents all the way back to February. And I'm sitting in seat 5 and was fully prepared on that February because Facebook had planted that a certain business owner on the West End was about to sell alcohol. And so in the packet, Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, we came with the idea that we were going to approve an alcohol license. That's it. That's it. Chief, my question to you that night was that I was a little bit confused. The border of a business, was that the measuring line to the church? Or was it the trailer? You remember me saying something to that effect? And you said, we measured it from whatever that rule was, and it was 475 feet, it had to be 300 feet, something to that effect. When I got your answer that night, I said, okay, I'm ready to this. But before I even answer that question, we come down and there's this portfolio of information with yellow highlights about other things that hadn't been done. My assumption was that may have been the code enforcement. I don't know exactly. Well, that next day, for some reason, Dave, if you'll remember, you were standing there and I was standing right there. And you asked me, what's going on with the council? And without missing a beat, I said, Dave, what's going on with management? Why is there so much confusion and chaos? We never get a straight answer. I can even go back to beginning stages with Mr. Tram and Mr. McCorkadale, and I'm highly perplexed. How is it that this is the body that's unpaid, and we're supposed to be doing the grind of the work and the policies that you want? I ain't getting paid for that. That ain't even my field of service. The buck has to start with management, I said. Look it up. I ain't changed. And a management that does not say, I'm the highest paid dude in the program, and doesn't accept responsibility for this town and the policies being set forth and carried out in accordance with policies, as in, you don't waive permit fees without council approval. For one, there's questions also of conflict of interest. There's testimony after testimony that says that one developer, that developer gets these sweet deals. The other developer comes out, doesn't get those same deals. They go out, they fuss about it. And that fussing comes here. It comes there. And after the Cowboys won 2 Sundays ago, and I'm taking my nap, I got a friend of mine cussing like a sailor. I didn't know he could cuss like that. And he's upset because the city said he's got to undo everything and be torn down. So I sent him a text. And Dave told me at the time, and that he could have shut me down, and I guess he based it on something he was being told for different people, and that was what? A week ago Sunday, brother? Goodness gracious, I could just keep going on and on. Miss Tilly, with her video cam, mind you, this is now between Miss Tilly, the other employee, and Mr. Hanna and his secretary. 2 of those willing to go under whistleblower protection. That's a formidable thing in my view. Ms. Tilly goes with that and gets the testimony of an upset, irate couple. And it's the same deal, clear and simple. Hear it from West End, hear it down at 149, hear it from developer Eastwise, even hear it from the other side, over and over and over. I can't find any happy campers, y'all. I'm just saying. I cannot find any happy campers. That's a Reader's Digest view. I've got countless testimonies to that effect. I know this, my coaching background and everything else. There's a NCAA football coach that's under fire at the University of Oklahoma. I missed that Texas OU game, but I watched enough of their defense, and they just flat checking it in. They ain't playing for him. They just ain't playing. They're lost. They're confused. 2 years ago when that first defense coordinator came in, I said, I know why you can't play defense. Nobody knows their assignment. Everybody's scrambling. Who needs to be fired in that case? It's the management's job, just like it's a head coach, just like it's a corporate sponsor, whoever it is in charge. And that tendency, y'all, has been 2 years. In my opinion, City needs to do a better job of deciding what the qualifications are for management. I don't believe he's doing it intentionally. I don't know. I don't know. The preponderance of evidence weighted upon me such that I'm negligent. And I guarantee you one way or another, this mayor right here is going to hear it either way. I couldn't win in that situation. I was told in that office before in May, you need an investigation to be done, you come to chief. Now suddenly that's wrong? Well, it has to be criminal. Well, how the heck do you know if it's criminal? I don't know. What I do know is exactly what the testimony shows and our experience shows. You have internal strife, the wheels are off. And I just don't have any confidence. I just don't, that it's going to change. But what I hear from the 5 candidates who will come here Monday or Tuesday, what I hear from their testimony is they don't come in and make excuses. They're okay with hard being hard. And purposely, I guided this council in this process to find the next administrator. And I said, listen, we're not going to sugarcoat this. We're not. We're going to tell it like it is. This is a hard dang job. It is a very challenging. It is not for the faint of heart. We are gaining 1,500 to 1,600 homes in 3 to 5 years. Unless y'all want to build a wall around this here city, then businesses are coming. I can't do it. I'm not qualified. And no one's expecting Dave to do it or anybody to do it by themselves. My recommendation is we've got to move a different direction. If we're going to pay $109,000 for a position and then pay 100 and whatever that ends up being on top of that, we're running pretty slim already, guys. We just are. So I fully expect that whomever this council chooses to lead, that's going to be somebody who says, let me take the reins. I got this. And that's what I hope. I'm fixing to wear out with all this mess. And that's what I was told when I was an administrator too, over and over and over. If my school board had to deal with phone calls and messages and unhappy campers, and I've campaigned 2 consecutive worn out son of a gun elections, busted my tail. Ain't nobody paid me nothing. You want to talk about service? Let's talk about service. I had donors come up and I turned them away. I'm my own campaign manager. I'm my own man. I don't want your money, but I'll do this here job because I can do it. But I ain't no city administrator. Need something done in school? I can do it. So it's disappointing that we have to do this here. You want to see my homework? How many times did I ask you, Mr. Hanna, for clarification over the time? A few times, right? Even called you Saturday for confirmation on certificates of completion. How's that work? You're not supposed to have a certificate of completion when you can go back and find there's permitting problems to begin with. And there's communication problems, right and left.
Barb,
Yes.
and Mr. Hunt is present. Can we hear from him as far as?
Mr. Song.
Mayor, does Mr. McCarkendale have this report that we have?
No,
Why?
it's right there.
No, it's not right here. Can I
Oh.
put some things up?
Sure, please.
Yeah, we're sitting here. We did that before, and now that you guys are in the recollection from the mayor, I'm gonna have to straighten you on that recollection. Dave and I have worked together. I don't think, do we have a conflict? No. We've had some, if we disagree on something, then we would talk about it. The email that you received, David put you on that email. I didn't even know you were on that email. And when I responded about what we were talking about, the code enforcement, I responded because I had gotten some complaints from the code enforcement officer who works for myself. And the email that you guys got about the hiring of the next city manager, that came after a meeting with my guys, because they were looking, where are we going in the direction now? We've had some things that's happened. What are we going to end up with the city manager? Because we were moving. We were talking about a new building. We were talking about moving ahead on some things. And we make plans as a police department and as an organization, but those plans have to go through City Hall. It has to go through you guys. So the day that you called me for the meeting over here for lunch, the frustration was that when you said, well, you guys had a meeting with Dave, the code enforcement officer had been asking me, says, hey, look, Rick Hanna's group would like to meet with you. And I said, no, they've been talking about that for months. I knew she was frustrated about some of the things and the way things were going with code enforcement and with building official, with permits and things of that nature, by not following what we've got in our city ordinances. I spoke with Rick that Monday. After you and I talked, I spoke with Rick. I called the attorney, said, look, the mayor wants to start an investigation. I did not know in that investigation that you thought there was a conflict between me and Dave until after the investigation was done. And I'm thinking, no, that's not what that investigation is about. It's not about a conflict between Dave and I. It's about the frustration of the people who are doing the permitting for the city, who are doing the inspection for the city, who's doing the coding for the city. I actually sat down and had a conversation with Dave in his office, and we talked about that's how he found out about the investigation. Is because he asked me about it. I was standing in his face, and I was not going to lie to him about the investigation. So we sit down and we talked about it. And I told him, sure, that's the frustration. There may be some conflict of interest there. What we found in that report, there's things that looks like there's liability issues. An administrator's job is unlike my job. I don't have to make people happy. I just go by what the law says. If the law says this is what we do, then that's what I do. I don't care about doing any favors for you. I don't care about where we got to go with that. Their position is quite different. They've got people who they've been dealing with for years. And you know, we talk about this. Mr. Trim is gone. A city manager would come in right off the bat and start looking at what you've got in your ordinance, start straightening those ordinances out. That's when that starts to happen. When I come in as a police chief, the first thing I do is start looking at policies. What do our policies say? Are we doing what our policies say? Does that work for us? And those things have to be done. So I wanted to clarify that, because there was not a conflict between Dave and I. But the investigation boiled down to the things that needed to be straightened out. In his office, we talked about that. Rick, doing that investigation, he says, you know, I don't think Dave is just doing this on purpose. He says, I think he's trying to please some people. And I told Dave that in his office. And I told him, I said, you've got to start holding people's feet to the fire. You've got to make sure if that's what our ordinance says, then that's what we need to be doing, and not something else. Not one thing for somebody and then something else for someone else. Because those are the things that begin to get us in trouble. Police officers can go out here every day and do their job. The other day we had a police officer who gave someone a break, and that's the person who complained. Was the person he gave the break to. Because that's how it happens. People, if you don't hold people to the fire and just keep them going, and you know that you're doing the right thing. So those are the issues that we've got. Now, with Rick has a huge liability in this thing. That if he's not able to do the things the way he's supposed to do those things, then yeah, it gets his company in trouble. And our code enforcement officer she's a stickler. I mean, if that sign doesn't say city, it just says Montgomery, then there's something wrong with it. So she's good at her job, and she knows what she's doing. She's done all of these things. So, but I just wanted to make sure that we didn't think that there was some type of conflict between Dave and I. He stepped into a position that was coming from Richard that nobody has clarified. I don't know if Dave's ever been a city administrator.
You can see, though, that because that followed the frustration and the rebuke back to Dave,
Yes.
how that was easy to make that connection, because that was so close together that it was easy to make that association of
Right.
frustration. Be that as it may, you zealously believed that there were things that if we had not done this, can bring tremendous harm to this city in terms of liability.
And I would definitely agree with that, because there's things that will come back as a liability. Because, not speaking for me, I don't know the job, but I know Rick knows the job, and those are the questions that I asked. Can this be a liability on the city? And as far as me doing this investigation, this is not the first time I've done an investigation on a city administrator, a city secretary, or anybody. When it looks like it may start off as a criminal investigation, that's why we talked about if it's that, then it goes to the DA's office. There was nothing criminal about this investigation. We have to start the investigation first of all to see if there's something criminal about it. If there was something criminal about this investigation, then we would have brought in the Texas Ranger to handle the criminal part, and we would have handled the administrative
Which is
part.
exactly what I conveyed to Mr. Allen today.
And so
Right.
that's the way those investigations go. But we talked in his office last week, and I told him, we found nothing criminal. Are there things that needs to be addressed? Absolutely. The liability issues, the possible conflict of interest, just the things that's been going on for a while. And a lot of times, you're just not getting those, you don't have the guidance on what you guys are looking for. Perfect example of that, and you're not the same group, but the perfect example of that was when we were trying to do the ordinance on the food trucks. They stood here 6 times asking which way do you guys want to go, and 6 times. And I told him once, I said, you just need to make the decision and just give it to them. Because sometimes that's how it goes. But yeah, would I agree that there's some liability issues there? Sure. But I want to make sure that we straighten that other part out.
Okay, so kind of on that vein, Mr. Olson has been traveling for a while out of courtesy. I asked because he, before he left, had received, just like each other individually, the results of the investigation, which I did try to get, as I have stated, at that first meeting before Dave McCorkadell was going on vacation. That was clearly the intent. I got stopped by 3 council members in the parking lot saying, I thought we were going to go into executive session. So let me be clear about that. But I sat here and read every letter off, look up in a bewildered way, and Dave's smiling, and everybody's looking at me. I'm like, we don't have executive session. Well, I had asked before, do we have executive session? Can we at least review what we had in personnel? That was what was supposed to have happened. And we came expecting to be able to at least look at what we had together. And so that was the intent again tonight. So Mr. Olson says, the only actions I find to be concerning at this point with the evidence that I've seen is the inconsistencies concerning the waiving of building permit fees and the inconsistencies in the amounts different builders are charged. I also believe there's enough evidence to state that there are inconsistencies with who needs a permit and for what. There seems to be favoritism or personal agenda dictating decisions in several cases. I also believe before action is taken that an audit should be conducted concerning permits, the cost of permits, and what permits were required for what projects, or if projects were allowed to be completed without permits. Well, that's no duh. Dozens of them were. The written testimony of our code enforcement officer was to me more a confession of her not doing her job, and he elaborates on that. That's his position on a particular testimony, not the overall testimony there. So, you know, again, getting back to how do you know whether something's there, Councilman Olson simply wonders what I do, how much money does it cost the city when we don't do things the way it's
Mr. Mayor,
supposed to be done?
may I ask a few questions?
Okay?
Why has, Alan, should Mr. McCarkendale have a copy of what we've had?
Absolutely.
At this
Okay.
point, yes.
I really think that he should. That being said, when Casey's asking for an audit, I know how expensive audits can possibly be, and I don't know how you would determine it. And as far as I've lived in this city, everyone, I've lived in this city since 1975, and all of these inconsistencies that we were talking about, I've seen them. I've known Mr. Hannah for a long time, and I think there's no doubt in my mind, Chief Solomon is the best chief we've ever had. And I've lived here a long time, but he is the best chief. And I've known Dave for over 15, 16 years. I've never known him to be particularly partial to anybody. I've never had personal businesses with him. But on the other hand, I consider him to be a man of integrity. I think that if something was done, that it was done maybe unintentionally. I have always known, I'm sorry, the developers to be, oh, he likes him better than he likes me. It's always been that way. So I kind of understand that issue about it. I really feel like that the investigation, like I say, I feel like that Dave needs a copy of this to see what was said, because I don't think that that's very fair to have an investigation and not understand what you're being accused of.
And you're absolutely right. The mayor and I spoke in my office, and I told him that Dave needed a copy of this investigation, and that he needed at least 72 hours to be able to rebut anything that was in that investigation.
I would appreciate that in writing.
Okay, absolutely.
I mean, I would have. I mean, I graduated magna cum laude in
Yes, sir.
Darrell School, as you know.
Right.
We went through intensive 8-week training. I'm being sarcastic, Chief.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been very clear. I lean on legal counsel. Did I not tell you this again today?
Yes, absolutely.
And to be accused of not following legal counsel is exactly what we're saying.
Okay.
Okay, so I lean on what you say. I don't remember you telling me I need to give a copy to
You
Mr.
can-
Corkadale.
Oh, you don't ever remember that?
No, sir, I do
Okay,
not.
you may not remember that, and that's fine. But for me, it's a routine. It's just the way an investigation goes. When we take, there's 614. 614 says that if you accuse a firefighter or a police officer of wrongdoing, that you have to, and I explained this today, that you have to give that person that complaint. Once they get that complaint, then they have to be able to rebut that complaint. It's a hard thing for anyone to come into any situation and not know what they've been accused of.
Well, sir, I love you to death, but you did not give me that counsel. And we've had dozens of, you did not make that clear. You did not make that clear. We talked on the phone over and over, and you went and you said, yes, we need to follow through, and that's what I did.
And maybe that's the case on how you remember it, sir, and I won't say, but it's routine for me, and I know I said it. I also said it to Kate, to the attorney. So, but if you don't recall that, then that's I'm sorry about that if you don't recall it, but it was said.
May I speak?
Go ahead.
Mayor, I'm really happy that there was no criminal goings-on or anything criminally found in this investigation. I think what we have here is a real policy issue that has to be addressed, and I don't think that something we can address here tonight. I think it's something that maybe with Dave and the council that we sit down and hammer out what's going on and what needs to happen going forward, because the city cannot be exposed in any kind of way, whether it's showing favoritism or not having Mr. Hannah be able to do the job that he does, which is so crucial to buildings going up. That has to be done right, and that's my main concern here right now, that we get this policy right going forward.
That's the main concern of both the code enforcement officer and also Mr. Hampton. They just want to be able to do their job, and to do their job by the rules and the regulations that the state and the city has set forth for them to do that job. And they just want to be able to do that job like that. And that's why, if you think there's been any back and forth between Dave and I, that would be the only back and forth that we would have. And that's going to be, hey, Dave, she can't do that because she can't do it for these reasons here. And so that would be the only reason. But that's what these people want to do. And if we don't address these ordinances that we have that are way out of date, that needs to be changed, that need to be seriously looked at, we've been changing the ones that we thought are on law enforcement side. We've changed them. We've got one coming up here real soon that we're going to be bringing back to council. But these things need to be changed. But we need to go by the rules as well. We need to make sure that everybody are following the rules and policies of the city, the state, whatever the city council sets forth.
Mr. Mayor, could I also read something I received?
Okay.
This is from Matt Fuller. Matt Fuller is, he is not a resident of the city, but he, right now, he's president of the, for the school. He tells me, I want to contact you as a citizen who relies on the city for many, many things. I understand David Carpendale's performance is going to be on the next city council meeting. I don't know exactly the full details of the situation that's being faced. I just want to say that Dave has been asked to handle many of the more challenging elements that the city has faced. He has done so with honesty, integrity, and tact. In his interactions with me, he has always been straight and transparent with me. Again, not prying in any details, do not want you to say, but just want you to know, to hear another side of Dave's performance from my perspective. Sincerely, Matt Fuller.
Well, after all the years that that I have been at the city, this is a situation that I am not comfortable with at all. I think at the city of Montgomery, people have to wear many, many hats, and sometimes we might not put A, B, and C together. We might jump to K and not realize that we've jumped to K. I also believe that people know in their heart and their mind that they're trying to do the right thing. I personally would have never, ever volunteered to be the interim city administrator. I've told you that. I appreciate you doing that, but I'm not comfortable with the situation. I know Rick Hanna has a very important job. I know that Miss Tilly does also, and I appreciate everyone doing their job. When you're not doing your job right, just like with Mr. Tram, you have to give a list of what you're expecting from them, and if they can't fulfill it, then the time comes to do something about it. Mr. McCorkindale has never had that. He got thrown into the investigation pretty quickly, and I personally did not do the videos. I'm not going to do the videos. I've read all the articles that have come to my attention, and it can be fixed. He has been wearing many hats, and I just want to say thank you.
Mayor, not to upset you, but do you remember when I said that Dave needed to be interviewed?
The what now?
That Dave needed to be interviewed on this investigation? You don't remember that one?
You wanted to do the interview of Dave?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the course that we set, but legal counsel said it would be better for legal counsel to do the investigation. You remember your comment back to me that was a bit insulting, did you say?
That was
Because you had 20-something years of experience.
Absolutely. When you start looking at the integrity of an investigation that I've done, absolutely. But when we talked about that he needed to be interviewed, his interview would come after 72 hours of being able to return.
Well, we've already gone over that, so my apologies for whatever miscommunication was there. Mr. Alan Petrov, there is no point in going forward if council feels comfortable with the idea of Mr. McCorkdale receiving, with my apologies publicly, Dave, for not hearing that clearly. Again, I was being sarcastic. We don't go to mayor school. I don't have a civil engineering job or a civil duty thing or whatever. But I was clearly told something in May, and I did that something. And then I did what I felt what I needed to do, because I got to go out on the campaign trail. I got to get these answers. And all I'm asking management to do is we please take the heat off of us. And that's my background. And if management does a good job, the boat sails good. And that's all I'm asking to do. I can't do it, Dave. And I know the 5 months. I'm not judging you on that 5 months. And I clearly said, I appreciate your professionalism and the way you're communicating and stuff and things like that. But I also said in the transition, council will be reviewing things, because we didn't know, and things were that way, like I say, the whole council. Confusion, chaos, a need for direction. And that's what I'm asking for management. And I don't think that's unreasonable to follow policies and whatnot. And then to get recommendation for management when we need to adjust those policies. And keep bringing it, though. I know the handcuff, I was there, that was here. And so I realize those types of things. But getting back to Alan, we can resolve through a motion to make sure that he's able to see everything. Is that correct?
That is correct. It sounds like it would be appropriate for him to see the report, to provide council with his responses, and perhaps if he has some recommendations, assist things going forward, he could provide those recommendations to council as well.
Okay. And again, for the same types of reasons, no need to make a motion, anything regarding the city secretary, in my view.
Correct.
So just make the one motion if council wants to do that. Wait a minute. Do we need to adjourn executive like we normally do?
Well, technically, we're not in executive session, so no.
Well, I'd like to say something.
Okay.
Would you recognize me, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say that it really saddens me that we've come to where we are today. I feel that my position was placed on the agenda this evening as an act of retaliation by the mayor, which it seems to be a knee-jerk reaction, something that has been a habit to take tonight's discussion with the chief and the mayor. On learning that the interim city administrator position was to be placed on the agenda for October 25th, that an investigation had taken place, I personally called the mayor in my own capacity as HR. I strongly recommended to him to not place that item on the agenda, as had the legal team at that time, because the employee was not going to be in town, among several other reasons that I have true. The mayor refused. I informed him that appropriate and proper channels had not been followed, as HR was not informed of the complaint or that an investigation was taken on. He responded that City Council collectively felt that there was no clear HR person, as my official job description was just the City Secretary. Not true, sir. I was hired as the City Secretary and Director of Administrative Services. HR official is one of those duties. When I spoke out at the meeting on October 25th, it was out of frustration and to protect the city, as the actions of the mayor left the city open to potential lawsuits. The mayor went against the recommendations of myself and what I believe legal by conducting the investigations without first informing HR that an employee was under investigation. And to this day, as we have just heard, Mr. McCorkadell, the employee, the subject of the investigation, had never been questioned nor provided a formal notification of his allegations or actions and the results therein. And one other subject, which is meet me in ad hoc here, in our conversation, you actually, and the email that you subsequently wrote to me says you felt that I had said I was going to be better and more capable to hold the investigation than the police chief. I don't know where you assumed that. I've never stated that. I never emailed it, never spoke it. Chief, I have never done your job, sir. My job as an HR official is to protect employees and the city of Montgomery, something that I have learned to love in the short time I've been here. Placing the item on the October 25th council agenda, the employee absent, was, in my opinion, a direct attempt to sabotage him and his employment. The morning of the 26th of October, I received a vicious email from the mayor. He claimed that I was unfit, in his opinion, to continue HR functions. Really? Am I or am I not HR? Please, I'm confused here. The fact I am here now, having to defend my actions on the 9th of the 25th of October, is a clear act of retaliation. You have had not one single word of negativity on my performance or duties until I spoke out on that evening. I believe you are once again putting the city at risk of litigation. This is pure retaliation. To address Councilmember Healy's comments on the night of council, where she stated it was not the time or forum for such discussion, I did write to all three councilwomen and let them know I felt apologetic for making them feel uncomfortable. However, I still declare that at that time, Mr. McCorkadell's letter and statement had been provided to the mayor and council to say that he wanted it in open. We were in open session, and with the mayor blatantly giving me the email that he refused to communicate with me on the subject anymore, I felt this was the only venue to address the subject. The mayor's actions should be a grave cause of concern to all. He refuses to follow established policies, refuses recommendations offered by staff and legal, and has made such assumptions, made mine and other positions with the city here untenable. How can we trust in his actions as employees? I want to. When will the next gotcha come? I have pledged and dedicated my skill set to this city, and yet he feels that he can just override everyone, rules included. He has created what I feel is a hostile work environment. Thank you.
Hesitate to speak to any of those disagreements, but I will say you asked about a return phone call. You know I work for a living, so I gave you the one phone call answer stating everything, and then when you require that in redundancy, I didn't see any point to that. It's something else for you to say that I created this. No, sir. No, ma'am, I did not. And for you to say that there's inequitable treatment or unfair treatment or anything else, again, we could go on and on. But the main thing is you broke protocol. You broke the quorum. Had you not done that, there was nothing except a conversation needed. When you did that, that's exactly not meeting the goals, as we talked about, okay? And I did not get, I'm so through, I didn't get an apology. I got something rather that said that the very statement, and Alan, I went over this with you again today, the very statement that I was told by Kayla Villarreal to state, the very statement says, in the absence of an objective third party, and I've seen how close you two have become, okay? Then that's why it was fashioned that way. Am I correct, Alan? Yes.
Okay.
That's the count. I'm not through. I want to be very clear.
Did you not just say it, or that your statement as you were talking, that you believed until Chief actually corrected you, you believed there was friction between Mr. Corkadale and Chief.
Well, I know there
Yet you
was.
instructed him to-
I know there was because we sat in the
Sir,
community
you
center.
have convicted-
No, you let me finish. We were in the community center. And there was friction. And it was over $186,000 if I remember right. Then, before we got to that, in a budget meeting, you recall both of you getting into it with a council member. Over and over and over off of something very simple. Would you please give us a salary to look at?
And you had
Only after the fact.
it? No.
If I remember correctly, it's the one reason why we couldn't finish the budget, and we called for
Absolutely
another
not.
one.
How dare you even insinuate that? You were provided it first and foremost yourself.
I was, but the rest of the council
No, the
was.
council got it all.
I got
And
it.
Casey actually came to me
Casey
and
did not get
apologized.
it.
Let me tell you what, that was Casey's responsibility.
And you are out of order. Please
I
stop.
am. I absolutely am.
Stop or be removed. Stop or be removed. We'll take this up later.
Come on, Chief, take me out.
All right, we need a motion to do as we have spoken earlier.
I love you, Karen. You are a beautiful woman and a proud woman. Sheriff, I feel the same for you. Men, you have what you have coming. I am so sorry to the citizens and the employees of this city. You are disgraceful.
And what happened?
Okay. Sure. No, that's not right on Barron's party.
Mr. Petrov, is there any condition upon which council can go to a executive session at this time? Given everything.
You are still in session. You can talk about the topics that are on the agenda, but you can't go into closed session on those topics because of the request that was
Gotcha.
made that they be
That answers
discussed
my
in
question. So we're still looking for a motion
What's the
to
motion?
simply, or do we need a motion? We just simply agree to just simply do what we stated. It's already been stated, is it?
But if
need
we
a-
weren't in
there's no
executive
real
session, why do we have an
There's-
action?
There's no action, really. There's just simply an acknowledgement that he needs to be able to review everything.
That's right, you don't really need a motion for that.
Then we're good to go. All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make the
Oh,
motion.
hold on. Council inquiry.
Oh, council inquiry. I'd like to just state that last week I made a trip to San Marcos for the Texas Downtown Association and represented the city of Montgomery. It was a very good seminar. I've got some information, and I know that EDC will hold a meeting on the 21st, and I'll update them and give them a quick overview of what my information that I got, and then I can come back to council with some of it to see what, if the council and EDC want to stay as a member of this association. But it was a very good seminar.
Thank you, Carol, for taking time off your job and your personal time to do that. I appreciate that.
I would like to, and I don't know if a motion is needed or not, but we still need to address the problem with permitting. I would like to move that the city council meet in private session to discuss the problem with permitting, because there is a problem with
Well,
permitting.
But I don't think it's a closed session item. We have a new permit tech, and I'm not sure who that person's boss is. So it may be that we just need to get some information on that permit tech, and then how does it flow down? I don't know. When I come in with a set of plans, what's the procedures?
Yes, and how do we make sure that it's equitable and fair, and no one's being charged one thing and somebody being charged another? How do we as council assure that?
We don't, because we're not up here.
We have no
every day.
power or
It's not-
authority to do any of that.
It's not.
That's something that, do we have to address the administration to make sure that they are fair and equitable in that regards?
Well, you guys set the regulations, and so you need to make sure the regulations are clear.
True.
And then periodically, you can request reports to make sure they're being administered uniformly.
But you know, if there's a permit that, for some reason, that a permit fee is waived, the reason I say that, this goes all the way back to many, many, many different city administrators, that I personally had fees waived at the community building, which is not a permit, well, it is sort of, but because it's a garden club, we take care of the grounds, so usually there's a reason that they waive the permits or the fees at that point. So I understand that there's a reason, some reasons are to the betterment of the city versus to the detriment of the city. So I guess that was something we could address.
Excuse me, if you read that Texas Municipal League, it tells you that, yeah, fees can be waived, but those fees have to be, the approval has to come from you guys. There's certain cases where fees can be waived. So that's just something you guys need to say. If it's going to be waived, then it needs to come from the council.
And it has to have a reasonable reason.
Yes, one of the reasons I put in there why a fee can be waived.
Yes.
And there should be a written policy that everybody knows what it is and everybody can follow.
Okay. Can I make the motion to adjourn?
Not yet. I reached out to a state level energy, TxDOT person made a connection who had connection to energy to get going on this right-hand turn lane. And then pass that information on to pertinent personnel a couple of days ago. So I wanted to read that that right-hand turn lane has been coming for a long time, and they've been waiting on each other and blaming each other, so I finally got to the right sources. It says there's a scheduled first outage on 11/22 from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. I asked them to put it such that businesses could not be interrupted. And so that's the first power outage, is November the 22nd for 6 hours. They're going to do part of that moving. And then the next one is the week after, which is November the 29th. And
Ooh, that's bad.
this is military time. 8 p.m., he needs a 7th hour. So 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. on the 29th. These outages are to reconductor, he calls it, the feeder, and remove the line for the turn lane at 149 and 105. Any interruptions, I think he said there was only 22 customers on the first one, but any interruptions to the residents won't be as bad because it's just not, it's not as warm. But anyway, good news coming on that, but do know about the outages. All right.
Okay, okay.
So now motion to adjourn.
I make the motion, we adjourn.
Motion and second.
Second.
Motion's debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of adjournment, say yes.
Yes.
And it is 7:29 and we are adjourned.